All right, so okay, now it's recording. Cool. So the first announcement that I want to talk about is the Nitro, the Discord Nitro. So the first place in the Me6 leaderboard will be getting a Discord Nitro, and it doesn't matter who it is right now. Whoever is gonna be in the first place on October 15th will be getting it. Okay. Now, obviously, you need to be a GDC member, but I'm clear. I think it's pretty clear and stuff that whoever is in this meeting right now is definitely a GDC member. So you guys don't need to worry about that. But if the first place, now here's the thing: if the first place in the Me6 leaderboard already has a Discord Nitro, then it will just be bumping it down to the next person, whoever else is in the Discord, whoever else is in the second place or third place. Like basically the list goes on, the pattern. So yeah, just keep this in mind. On October 15th, I'll be announcing the winner of the Discord Nitro, and you'll be getting 1 month free of Discord Nitros, thanks to you, with all your hard work and everything. Now you might be asking, how can you work harder to get that Discord Nitro? How could you be in that first place? Well, one way you could do that is by just constantly be active in the server. The more you type, the more messages you type, essentially you'll be getting some XP from that. And I think it also depends on how active you are on this server as well, and it also that kind of really depends, right? And that really essentially tells you what's your point system and how much points you'll be earning in the entire Discord server. All right. So another way you could also earn is by also sharing the posts, the new posts of GDC to your IG story. And if you mention our GDC name, we'll be adding around like I think 500 or 1,000 XP per every single mention you do. So I think it's a pretty large amount of XP that you could earn. And also one final way is actually submissions. Yeah. So I've seen that a lot of you guys. So let me change this to the main page so that you can see what's going on. Yeah, I've seen that a lot of you guys are putting a lot of effort. Some of you guys are doing really interesting results. Like this is really hilarious. I really appreciate all of your work. At least putting some effort into your assignments, and you do actually earn 1,500 XP per every single submission. Okay, that doesn't really matter on like if it's not like once you complete all the single tasks of the week, then you get this certain amount of XP. Is that every single task you do, you'll be getting 1,500 XP. So let's say like I believe this person, Oli, yeah, he did character development and he also made his own maze, and that was actually in 1 week of the assignment. So that doesn't mean he'll only earn 1,500 XP total. He actually earn 3,000 as a whole because he has submitted 2 different things. So the more submissions you do, you essentially get essentially more XP, and that's how you could actually bump yourself up into the leaderboard. So I just want to make sure that this is kind of a fun thing. Like I know that a lot of us love Discord Nitro, and it's kind of a fun activity to do, like competition and stuff, and kind of just makes you prepared for the reality in the future that life isn't fair and stuff. So yeah, it's a win-win situation in a way. All right. All right, so that's basically the biggest announcement. October 15th, I'll be announcing the winner of that Discord Nitro, and I'll be gifting you. So don't worry, I'll just DM you. I might need to make. You might need to accept my friend request, then I can send you the Discord Nitro gift. Okay. The next thing is I also want you guys to help. Like maybe I'll be making some submission document, and you guys can submit your own emojis. And actually, that's also another way that you could earn Me6 XP. I think it's like around 3,000 XP per every single emoji that you submit. Okay. Now, when I say submit, I said we approve it and we officially add it to the server. That is what we mean by that. Let me just go back to my presentation. Kind of, yeah. Like let's not look at the screen for now. Yeah. So yeah, I want your help to like essentially find more emojis. We want to make the server more unique and amazing. We want to add more single emojis and stuff. So yeah, you could help us over there. Okay, I'll be sending out maybe a Google form or something with the given dimensions, and you can upload your file. It could be either normal file or GIF, but that doesn't really matter. That these are all the announcements, and what matters today is obviously the topics that we'll cover in the GDC. Okay. All right. So we're done with the announcements and stuff. So I think I'll just be moving forward to the content of today. So how today's content is basically structured is today's meeting is gonna be a bit longer than before. It's probably gonna exceed around an hour or maybe more than an hour, but definitely not less because I think we have a lot of stuff to cover. And at least we need to recap on some stuff since it's been like I think over 2 or 3 weeks. So we might have to refresh our minds with some Unity concepts again. Okay, so we're gonna be starting off with all the things that we've learned in the past 2 weeks. So that could be like void awake, the methods, the string, like the primitive types, data types, variables, basically a lot of stuff. And we're just gonna do like a quick crash course on it. So I mean, I'm pretty sure all of you guys might know something about it. So it's just basically recalling the memories back and let your brain do the rest of the work, all right? And then after we're done with recapping all the previous methods, we'll do some brainstorming, some character design, some level design on how more on that, like how to essentially do it. And then later on, after we're done, you guys could like help. You could revise your work that you did for this week, the assignments. At least some of you who did it, and you could make your game even better. The first project which we'll do, which is the maze game, right? As a matter of fact, I think we should clarify this. We have already started our first project, so this is not required. Again, you guys can do this in your own time. It's just a way of practicing more, and the more practice you do, you're essentially going to do good in game development. All right. And then finally, I think I'm just gonna end the video with just some assignments that you have to do. I didn't make it yet, but I will still upload it on Discord so that you can see it in the later time. All right. So yeah, let's begin. So let me just open my screen. Please give me a moment. I need to find where we start first of all. Okay. All right. I think you guys can see it. All right. So I think it's the L key. Sorry. It's very laggy today. All right. So we're gonna start off again, just recapping with the things that we learned in the previous weeks. First thing, we were talking about coding itself. So how do we start coding? Because it's a very complex language. You know, a lot of us started from different places. Some of us know more than others. Some of us don't. We just don't know where we are. So for now, we're gonna start it off like this. It's just more like other stuff, void start, and I think we can just ignore this now. I'll just move on because I'm gonna start talking about these things anyway. All right, and again, I talked about the thumb rule of coding. Just copy paste. Do not waste your time at all. Okay, time is the most precious thing in life right now. To make your amazing games, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of hard work. So don't waste your time on typing individually or manually all these coding stuff. Okay, just copy paste. It saves a lot of time. Okay, this is something a lot of coders advise you to do. Although, you know, some people feel like, hey, it's a bit cool. It feels like, you know, I'm a hacker or something typing a lot. But in truth, it's a waste of time. So try saving your time even more, and it's going to help you a lot. All right, so that's what we're talking about. Let me just, you know, move my webcam a bit down so that, there you go. Let me just go back again. Then we learned about what white spaces are. Like, white spaces are just basically, if I go back to this thing over here, anything that's blank, okay, anywhere where there's no code, that is essentially a white space, okay, and that is what the programming language or the IDE that we're using is Visual Studio Code. They will just be ignoring that. They will only be looking at the things that are not commented. So commented in C# is 2 dashes, and then it becomes grayed out. Graying out basically just tells you that the program's not going to read that code. It's just like a documentation for the user. And it's just going to see the stuff that's colored usually, okay? Basically, or white or colored. And that's really what the program's going to read and comprehend and then compile that into your game. Okay, so that is basically white space. White space is just the stuff things are ignored. Just think of it that way, okay? Let me just go back. All right, there you go. All right, yeah, so there's also some stuff that we talked about that everything within a class, you know, class is like a blueprint, and a sentence basically is like a statement, okay? Whatever sentence we make in coding is just a statement. It's just we're telling your program to do something with the statement, okay? And a period, in a way, the semicolon thing that we always see in coding is just like a period, right? It's just a dot that we end a sentence with a dot. It's just the same idea in C# that you cannot end any statement without a semicolon. Okay, and then we have a class. So class, as you said, is like if you go back, class is like a blueprint. It's like a burrito that's storing all the stuff together as a whole, and it's just basically keeping all of this together. It's outlining everything, what the program to do. Usually the class is always the file name, so class is a type, and whatever's after that, for me it's purple color, for you it could be different, but anything that's after the word class is just usually your file name. So don't ever change this, because then it will cause some problems in your program. because then the IDE won't notice like, hey, your class name is different and your file name is different. So then it causes some error, and you never want to make a problem like that. So just keep that in mind, that your class name, whatever the name of your class is, just basically the file name in Unity. And you can know that by going into your Unity file. So if I go back to assets, anything that's like this is just usually it's a C# file. Unity uses C# as we know, and yeah, it's just a script basically containing a lot of information that can be put into an object. It's a scriptable thing where you could put this in a game object. Okay, and it really helps you in making the game more customized to your own terms rather than something like Scratch, which is just like a plug and play, right? Okay. It's basically that we just need to know that it's really important to keep our code style the way it is. Otherwise, if you do not know how C# works, if you do not know how it functions, how it's implemented, how the structure works, then we can get a lot of problems in coding, and then people get lost because they don't know where to start. So make sure that if you the moment you know a lot about C# and the structure behind C#, then you'll do really really well on the entirety of Unity game development. Okay. Yeah, so as you said, like we had this thing, anything on top, like we see that here, we can recap. Anything that's over here on top, we're just calling. It's something like an import in Java. In Java, we would import something. In Python, we can also import something. We're importing some sort of file, which contains a lot of list of commands for us that we can just use so that we don't have to waste our time making our own commands, right? So it's something that Unity does a really great job for us. And I think that's also why Unity is a bit of an easier programming language compared to other programming language. Obviously, Unity is not a programming language. C# is, but the things that they have ready for us, these essential tools, that's what's making the development process of our game really easy to do. Okay. And then we have the public class. We are going to go over what public private is. We have discussed about that in the previous weeks, but again, we'll move on. We'll do that once we get there. This is just basically, like the blueprint, as we said. We can move on there. Always know that this is always in a game object. The game object will read these commands, and it can actually help make that object come to life. It can't just stay there static. It has to move. And coding is what's really helping it move all the time. Okay. Over here, there are all these pre-made functions. There's like void start and void update. All of these actually comes from this thing called using Unity Engine. So if we look back up here, using Unity Engine contains, I believe, all of these commands. And without having this, you cannot be running these commands. It will lead you to an error, and you just can't run your game at all. So you should thank that. Unity has done all these things for you. All right, some important words that we were also talking about previously in those weeks was also like game object, console, void, class string. Class, as we know now, is just like a blueprint. It has a set of information that it can run. It's like a file name, right? Void, in other words, a void is just another word for method. It's just a bit of a complicated word. So just get used to that thing. It's void is method. Void is method. It's just a procedure. So within that procedure, whatever is said within that procedure, it's gonna do that whenever it's called. And that is actually another concept that we'll learn also in this recap. It's called refactoring. It's just helping you simplify your code even more. So it's also called abstraction, which is also amazing to do in your coding life. Okay, console is basically a place for debugging. Okay, it's a heaven for debugging. It's located over here. You can ignore these things. I'll just clear it out. But this is where you could debug your game. So if in case your game is not working properly, you could make some debug messages in your code, like in the C# code or file, and you could see those things happening on screen. It just helps you visualize, not visualize in a way, but helps you kind of do some signal, some testing, whether if something is working and something is not, and that will help identify a specific error in your code so that you could fix it. So it's a really, really beneficial tool if you use it the right way. And we will be using it a lot, not like in this project for now, but maybe in the future projects like the Rocket game and the Cyber Riot game, which it's amazing. It's a first person game. And then we have like a game object. Game object is just basically any object in Unity. Okay. A game object is just unique because you can put scripts in it, your own C# scripts, and it can do it, and it can run these files based on how you want it to run. And that's what's making Unity super, super cool and versatile, right? All right. Yeah, and I think I forgot to mention this. You should always use the void update. So whenever you want to debug something, always use this method, not the start method. whenever you want to debug your game. Okay, it's always recommended to do that. Um, yeah, and then string. String is just basically like a data type. There are many types of data types. Okay, there's like integers, booleans, floats. Like I don't know. I think it's called decimal. No, I don't know. If it's called decimal. Float is basically decimal, if you think of it. But yeah, these are all data types. You're trying to. It just basically you need to tell what each variable. If you make a variable, you need to state what type of variable it is. What will it store? Will it store a string, like a set of characters, an array of characters, or will it stores an integer, a number or something, or some decimal value? You need to specify, and this is something that's really important in coding. And once we get used to it, which we will, with more and more practice, we won't even have to worry thinking about this part. um okay, I think we already discussed about this. Let me just, I think I made a mistake. Let me just check. Yeah, I think I went super far beyond my code. Okay. All right, let me just go back here. Okay, so then we now let's actually talk about public, private, void, and static. These are all the things that we discussed about. It's also one of the most confusing things to get used to. Especially, wait, I think I missed. I didn't miss anything, did I? I didn't. Okay, that's good. I'm always worried that I might lose something. All right. So public is basically anything that it's specifying something. It's specifying that this method can be accessed publicly in the entire file of Unity, whatever you have. So let's say, for example, like you wanted a method where when this method is called, this set of statements will like lose the characters' lives, and you want to access that method in some other file in Unity, in another Unity C# file. And let's say that is the character file, like that is what's controlling the character. And this public method, when you call it instead of that method, it's gonna literally just do what it was said as a method. And it's really beneficial if you want to like use it in different places and not interchange, that's not a good word, but use it in many different places. Then you will always use a public method. Okay, right now we wouldn't be worrying a lot about this because we won't be using it a lot in our first project. But as we progress through this game development journey, you're gonna have to like get used to these terms, and you will once you get in, do more practice, and follow the DNA effect. Then we have the void. Void, as we said, it's just a method, but you should also know that it doesn't return anything. Okay, it doesn't return any value. And private is, it's like the opposite of what public is. So if you're gonna say private void and then the name of the method, it's just basically that method that will only work in that specific file. So you cannot access that method in other files in C#. So let's say again in that same example, this method will decrease a player's health. You cannot access that method in the other file. Okay, so that's when you need to make your method public. Okay, so this is like where you need to understand where to use what. Usually, developers make private methods just to not create any confusion when you're trying to access when you're making an object in another method. So you would, because you get many options as to what method you want to specifically use, then you can just narrow down to specific methods you want to use that just needs to be public. So it's just like an organizational tool for you all in the future coming years as your game projects get super complex. So you want to kind of organize which methods to use where, and that's where you would use public and private to make to discern between them. Okay. Then there's static. Okay, static. It's basically it's anything that does not belong to the class or the object. It just basically means that only one instance will be created and it will only remain over any scope. It is very confusing to understand, but if you ever get confused, just go back to this keynote. Still try to understand. If you still don't get it, don't worry. Just ask somebody in Unity. That's also one way to get your Me6 XPs and stuff and boost yourself up in that top leaderboard. All right. But yeah, just keep on reading this, trying to understand it. If you still don't get it, just hit us up. Like, just ask anybody a question in the Unity channel, and anybody will try to help you. Fix that problem. All right, then we have operators and expression. This is like, I think, a very easy thing. It's just basic math. It's not algebra or anything. It's just basic addition and subtraction. Um, so we need to know about one thing. I think a lot of us might know it if you were in a college level class or maybe in an AP or IGSE class. It's just these concatenation ideas where you can combine two things together. right? And I think even if you're not in those type of classes, you could still maybe just understand it. The plus sign is just connecting things together in Unity. Okay, so if you're gonna do hello space and then plus world, it's just same thing as just doing this, and it's just another way of just talking about simplification. You don't always need the plus sign everywhere in coding. You can just do this instead of that, right? And this is kind of something that you could think of it in your head when you're stuck in some really really difficult problems. It's the idea of simplification. All right. All right. This is actually a pretty good thing to talk about because this is something a lot of people get confused when they're also learning Java. It's just that when you have two things that are not string, then obviously it's going to be an arithmetic addition or subtraction, whatever it is. But if both of them are string, then they're going to be combined together, concatenated. Okay. But let's say if one is a string and one is not a string, like let's say one is just a number, then still they will be concatenated. So string is more dominant over numbers. Just think of it that way. String is dominant over numbers. You wouldn't ever have to worry about those scenarios, but if they do come over anytime, then just think of it that way. That strings are more dominant over numbers. Okay. Then we have the equal equal operator. So a lot of people get confused between one equal sign and the two equal sign. The one equal sign is just used as assigning stuff. Okay, so let's say over here, on top over here, I assigned this. I used only one equal sign because I wanted to assign I wanted to store this string inside of this variable. So this variable represents this. This is what it is. This is basically that. That's when you assign things. Okay, that's one equal sign. Whereas two equal signs is just as a comparison thing. So if 1 is equal to 1, well, 1 does equal to 1. So then the output will be true. Is 1 equal to 2? No. So then you would output false. And is the string 1 equal to string 1? Yeah, it is. And is string 1 equal to number 1? Well, it's kind of invalid because you cannot compare strings and numbers. It has to be the same data type, right? So you still get an error there. And 1 equals to 2, this is not like assigning. This is just already like not a way to do it. And you also need to know that in C# that the left side is where you would put the name of the variable, and the right side is the thing that you assign it to. Okay, so the left side is the name of the variable, and right side is where you assign that thing inside of that variable. Okay, so it's the left to right system. It cannot be right to left. It never works like that. It may work in mathematics, but not in coding. All right, so we also talk about simple approach to game design. It's always intention to execution. This is something that GameDev.tv did a really great job explaining. It's just that we're trying to make sure that when we're making a successful video game, we're trying to make sure that we're trying to make what we intended to do, and the execution we did, the output, the result of that game we make, it should be really close to the intention we wanted, right? So that's what you need to have, that kind of mindset, that this result of the game should really match what I really wanted to think, what I really want to expect in my game. Right? So it's always intention to execution. We want to match it as close to the intention. That's the approach to game design in the most simplistic manner. Then we also talk about how to design our maze game. So we want to know like the player experience of the game. So I think we also explain this is one way to outline how you want to design your game. So what is the player experience? You know, we want to make it feel like an old school game, a retro game. What's the mechanics of the game? So how is the game functioning? Well, we need to pass through this challenging maze using these keys we got, these input keys we got in the game, so that the player can interact in the game, right? And then what's the loop? There should be some sort of loop, right? Well, not always, but in this scenario, a game generally always has a loop. Well, here in our loop of a maze game is that it starts at the beginning of the maze, so trying to find to the end, the second point, the goal point of the maze. And well, it's just gonna help him proceed to the next level. It just keeps on happening until there is a definite end to the number of levels. Some people don't like to make a level. They love to make it infinite, so there's no ending to the game. So one example could be the dinosaur game. It's not a maze game, but the dinosaur T-Rex game made by Google. It doesn't end, right? Well, it kind of does, but not really. It's because the maximum level I think is 999,000, but still, in a way, it's like that. So yeah, there's no end to that. You can do it either way, but usually I would recommend definite end so that you wouldn't waste your time. All right. Then we also talk about indie game developers. We don't have to discuss a lot about this. We just said that we need to discern between the idea of indie game developers and normal game developers. So indie game developer is just you. It's not really considered a career, right? It's not a job role or something. It's just something like a hobby. You would think of it. And you just basically have more freedom. A normal game developer works in an office and they have a lot of do's and don'ts, from the company themselves. They cannot be implementing their own ideas. They don't have freedom as much as an indie game developer do. So this is something that's beneficial, but in a way a bit more dangerous because indie game developers have more freedom and therefore they could start making pretty bad decisions in a way, right? So just think of it that way. We were talking about that. We were discussing a bit about indie game developers. It is not a job as we talked about it. So yeah, you can always come back and access these slides. And I'm pretty sure that you could also access this on Google and get that clarified as well. All right, and we also talk about refactoring and encapsulation, this idea, this thing that I wanted to talk about, refactoring and abstraction. Why is methods necessary? It just helps you simplify your code. Rather than writing 3 lines of statements, you could just make a method that is just 1 line, so that it just simplifies 3 lines to 1 line. And the cooler part is you could always access it as many times as you want, which is also amazing. So instead of repeating this method 2 times, so making 6 lines total, you could just put it in 2 lines. So you saved a lot of lines, which is amazing to do. And this is actually some mindset that you need to keep inside of your head, that you need to try making your game as how would I try to say it? As simplistic as possible, because whenever you want to come back making patches to the game, making updates, it's actually easier for you to read what you have done, right? So the more messier your code is, the more harder it is to find your mistakes. It's actually a higher chance of making more errors and bugs in your game. So try to make your game a bit more, not the game, I mean, try to make your code a bit more organized and simplistic in a way so that you wouldn't encounter a lot of problems as usual. Okay, and obviously even more simplistic can lead to errors. So you need to know the balance between both of them, right? But yeah, this is the process called refactoring. You could also think of it as abstraction. Okay, so we can continue. I'm not sure if this... Yeah, then we could also talk about strings. We're still not done yet, apparently. It's kind of hilarious. String of characters. We've also talked about how strings work. What is a string? You could always think of a string like a string itself. It's like connecting things together. A string, in a way, is just basically an array of characters, right? So a character would be just 1 letter, and an array would be like a list. An array is like another word for list. So in a way, we could say like a string is they're connecting many characters together to make a longer character, right? You're making a longer character. A longer version of a letter would just basically be a word. You're combining many letters together to make a word. So that is a string. And a character is just basically a letter. So treat these similarities that way. Yeah, and how we organize it, how C# is organized. Game Dev TV also explained this in a really great way. We start from statements. The statement is all the things that the program is going to do. The function is the name. It's the void that will store all these statements, so you could call them anytime you want. And the class is just basically the file name, like a big burrito that will store everything together as one, so it can be compiled and stuff. So all these things are necessary. Not having a statement, it won't run anything. And not having a function, it will keep your program it will make your program more messy. And not having a class, you just can't even access it anymore because class helps you compile your code, right? It's easier. The Unity will access those things really not easy, right? They'll be able to access it. Without classes, they cannot access these files at all. So it is really crucial. Each different things that is in this, it's all crucial uniquely, right? So nothing's more important than the other. In fact, everything depends on one another. Okay, so this is an example of a method. So let's say we wanted a method that shows our main menu. It goes back to our main menu in the game. So let me just go back. I think I'm gonna sneeze. It's my bad. So this is the title. Usually we need to name our file something. So that would be the function name over here. This is the parameter. Parameter is what's gonna be stored inside of that method. So usually, like, let's say show main menu. So maybe you want to put the current scene index of where you are. And then, it may be used in the method to access that scene index and correspondingly get the output based on what you inputted, right? So think of parameter like what you're going to input in the method. Just think of it that way. It's another way of thinking input, right? But in this scenario, usually there's also chances that you're never going to put any parameters. That's why you would put 2 parentheses here. So people would be wondering in the beginning, why are there parentheses here? Well, it's because of parameters. Usually you would be inputting some information in, but not all methods are required to do that. So yeah. And then finally, the return value. So return value is like what type of it is. You need to tell the program, you need to tell Unity, the C# code, what type of thing this is. If you just say show main menu, they're not going to notice it. So you need to declare it first. What is the return type? So you need to say this is a void, this is a method. And then they're gonna know, hey, okay, so you're making a method. So then we could start making our own method in. Then you need to also make sure it's in brackets. So whatever is within the bracket is what's gonna be in that method. So whenever you call that method, it's just gonna run that set of statements that's within the brackets. Okay. So that's the definition of a function. Okay, so yeah, so just like encapsulating. This is something that they wanted to do some challenges on, and I just wanted to show it. It's pretty cool. Okay, now let's actually we've done this. Now we talked about so many things recently. Okay, we talked a lot of things, and this is done. Like this is literally the recap of the many few weeks ago of Unity game development. What we did. There's like a lot of stuff we had to talk about. We also talk about update and start, right? Update just keeps on updating the method, so constantly, and start only happens once the thing is called, right? So there's so many things we talked about, and if you still want to get over these things, you could always ask somebody that, hey, I want to know the difference between start and update, or I just want to know what awake and start is. What's the difference? Because these are really, really great questions, and the more questions you bring in, it's actually helping others clarify their answers as well. It also keeps the server active as well, so people don't feel like, hey, the server is too dead. So it's actually helping each other. In fact, the more questions you ask, the more answers can be gathered. And really, if someone else has a question and he wants to get that answer, he could actually search through that thing, and most probably someone would have answered the question, which is amazing, right? And this is a community. GDC is also a great Discord community, so we should all help each other out, because that's how success comes in. We need to teamwork, help each other out when at each other's hardest times, and that's how success happens. Okay. All right. So now let's talk about game ideation. Ideation, ideas. How do we put all our ideas together? How do we begin? There's so many things going on. You did this. You guys actually put some work into it. Some of you guys made mazes. I gave you some tasks to design some mazes, right? And then we'll incorporate them soon in the game. Today, I want to actually go over some of these ideas on how to make your maze designs much better, how to make your character designs much better. And I know that a lot of you may not want to make your game exactly the way I asked it to be. So you guys may not want it to make it look old school, maybe futuristic or medieval. There's actually many types. Voxel. There's also a style called voxel. So everyone has their own taste, and I really respect it. Gaming is a really big industry, and a lot of people have their own taste in it, which I truly respect, and that's what making gaming diverse. So really, thank you guys. So yeah, let's talk about game ideation. How do we start brainstorming? This is the biggest question asked in this entire game development world. How to start brainstorming? Because this is the main part. We need to start making our game, but we need to know how to start putting things together and eventually start making our own game. So, how do we start brainstorming? 1. Know what you're making. Okay? Just think in your head, what in the world am I making? Well, in our scenario, we're making a video game. Specifically, a puzzle video game, right? We're making a maze puzzle video game. So just keep that in mind. You're making a maze puzzle video game. Note that down somewhere. Usually I would put in a Google Doc or put in your notebook. If you're making a game design, usually people also design it in their own notebook. But have your own place, a very specific place where they can where you can put all your ideas together so that you can access them later. So first step, know what you're making. Put that on somewhere. Second step, after you know what you're making, what will your game do? So just think of it in your head. What is it gonna do? Is it gonna be a scary game? Well, let's not actually talk about that yet. How will if you're stuck? Like a lot of people ask me, are you stuck in this question? Yes, a lot of people will get stuck. What will your game do? Well, just think about this. What will the user have to input? What will he have to input? What will he have to do to interact in the game? So usually the first thing would be what kind of key bindings will he do? Is he gonna have to move? Is he gonna have to click something? What is it? How is he gonna input information in the game? Think of it. So for us, we would need to be using WASD keys to move around the character, right? It's just a basic video game. It's not too complex yet. We're not doing ray casting, so we're not really going in that yet. We're gonna do that in the FPS shooter game soon. So for us in this scenario, they're going to be inputting movement information, right? And they do that by doing the WASD key. So think of it that. Put that down somewhere. Then what's the goal of your game? Well, that person in the game, right? Whoever's going to play it, he wants to get to the end of the maze. He wants to finally finish the maze. That is the goal of the game. And he's probably going to receive like a trophy or, hey, congratulations kind of screen. that that's what he's gonna achieve. He's gonna achieve that, hey, you completed this level or you completed this game. Congratulations! It's some sort of success, right? Give them that, give them that happiness, that achievement, that feeling of achievement when they're finished it. That is what's the part of the what the game will do. Once you start noting this down, then you can move on. I think we can move on. The third thing is, what is the structure of game? After you've answered the previous question, what is the structure? When I say structure, what is like the story way? Like, is there a story with it? Is there like a narrative based game? Is it like that? Or is it an infinite loop game? So like no ending, something like Geometry Dash, or as I said, the T-Rex game on Google. Or does it have a definite ending? Like, does it have like only 5 levels or 10 levels or 20 levels, right? A game like Super Hot would be an example. Or there's also this a very scary maze game. It was, I think, popular in 2015 or something. Like, once you finish 3 levels of the maze, they'll just give you a jump scare of some girl. It's a funny game. It's a hilarious game. If you haven't played it, I recommend play it. But if you're scared of horror stuff, then I don't recommend it. But that's the idea. Do you want it to be definite, or do you want it to be indefinite? Something like that. Do you want to be infinite or definite? Yeah, so just think of it in your head. For us, it's just gonna be a definite ending. We don't want it to be narrative yet. We don't have like a storyline in this maze game. It's just a simple game we're trying to make. We have a definite ending, right? We only have 5 levels probably in the game, and after we're done with 5 levels, we're just gonna give the user some achievement kind of screen, that a win screen basically, saying that, hey, congratulations, you won, something like that. Then after you're done, note that down. And then the next question will be, what will the game need? Okay, so what are some requirements of the game? Some things could be like, hey, you need a character in the game. So for us, it would be like that box, that center character you're making that will move around the game. Then there's some side characters. For us, that doesn't really matter. But in some RPG games, MMORPG games, so many other games, you might need side characters. Then enemies or enemy or a final boss battle thing, something like that. You might need to design these things, outline it. What do you want? And just don't stop. Don't pause yourself doing this. Just keep on doing it. Just keep on doing it. Keep your mind flowing all the time to get these answers. Then know the setting. For me though, it's like an old school game. So what's the theme? It should be like a simple, playground area ish or something. Right? Something like a setting. Have a setting base, like have a definite setting in this place. Don't change your setting unless if it's like a time traveling game or something. If it has something to do with your game, then sure. But have a really a fixed setting that you can always that relates to the characters, that relates to everything in the game, that relates to the environment, that also relates to the way you're playing. In a medieval type of game, the mechanics is much more different than the mechanics in a normal setting game or in a playground game. Okay, so keep that in mind. You need to always keep that in mind. Then the levels, how many levels? For us, it's just going to be 5. It's not infinite. Then the input. So, like, how are we going to process this input that the person is doing? For us, it's simple. We're using Unity. Unity does this for all of us. It's like a get access input or input key. Obviously, the get key down, get key up. We can use this. Unity has helped us here. Then also music. Music plays a key role in game development. It kind of gives the feeling, the vibe in the game. And it's necessary, right? So many of these things are necessary. I haven't included everything. There's a huge list for this, but here are some of the lists that you might definitely want to, include in your game. Okay. After you have noted down everything, you can move on to the next question. Why do you want to make this game? Now, this would be a hilarious question because most of you are like, hey, it's just a project, right? Well, in a way, you guys are also doing it for learning. That should be your reason. This is the reason why I'm trying to ask you, why I should tell you to ask this question. It's as if to motivate yourself, okay? Game development is really hard. You'll be working for hours and hours in your future game projects. So you need to have something that's questioning you. Why do you want to even make this? Because you'll eventually come to that question. Am I wasting years of my life making this video game? Who knows? Answer this question and then you'll realize, no, I'm not. I want to do something about this and it's actually helping me learn. And once you find the answer to this, once you find the why to something, the how part is going to be super easy for you. Just trust me. It really works like that. Okay? So that's the idea about why this entire idea about game development. Once you answer all of these 5 questions, or do it, or at least answer it, finish it, then I'm pretty sure you have a rough foundation, a rough sketch of what you want to make this game. Okay? And then you could also share your ideas in the Unity discussion about what you want to do. All right? Now, let's also go to the next question, which is how to character design. This is also a big thing because a lot of us are not good at character development. A lot of us are not good at drawing. A lot of us are at different places, at different levels of um, understanding in the art level areas, right? You're not all good at this. Very few people are good at art. Very few people are good at this, and some of you guys who are not good at art are good at programming logic and stuff. So good for you there. But this is actually kind of a broad idea on how to character design for both for those people like us and also for those who are so good at artistic stuff. So the first thing is to know the theme of the game. So for me, it's old school. So keep your character in that area of the theme of the game. So have the idea, the way that person behaves, it should relate directly to the theme of the game. Because you want it to be very not concise. A better word for this is it should be very thorough. This entire game should be thorough. It shouldn't be very messed up. It should be organized and full. It should be complete. It shouldn't be something where you're not being okay. I think I got a better word. You should be consistent with your game. Okay, don't go off track with the ideas and stuff. Have a consistent idea, and once you have a consistent thing throughout the game itself naturally gets better. So always know that. Okay. The second thing is to know how the character that you're gonna make is related to the video game world. He could be like a civilian. He could be a hero, a soldier, a king, god, maybe. Who knows? I don't know. A parent, a teacher, a student, an employee, or work. It goes on. But you want to make sure in this step you want to give a one-word description of how your character relates, and do not use a very broad word. Use it like an example would be like a human, or even civilian. Maybe civilian is also such a broad word to describe that character. You need to make that the more descriptive the word is that describes the character, the higher the chance the character is going to be more developed in a way, right? So have a more descriptive word, a more specific word, and you're going to get a much detailed and developed character than what you might have expected. Right, then third step is to know your character's personalities. Apparently, I found out there's 16 personalities. I don't know if that's true or not, but I also shared this link in the resources tab on Discord, so you could let me just go check that right now. So if I go to, there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, so if you go over here, I don't know why they put a very face. I'm really sorry if I hurt your feelings. But yeah, you could go to this link over here. It has everything for you. You could study all the different personalities there are, and that actually will help you. But don't worry for this project. This project has a lot to do with just the mechanics of game development in Unity. So for this game project, you don't have to worry a lot about this part. But once you're making your own game project, yeah, maybe this is probably very important because personality is really what develops the character, right? It's something like that. And personality changes, and the more you study about this, the more you study about sociology, which I know is a very boring subject. It could make your game a bit more how do you say, real. It could give a sense of realism to the person who's playing it. Okay. And also give the character some history. Give some background information about this character. You don't have to like dictate it. You don't have to show that on screen, but try to express it. Try to express it in the game that he has some tough history, not just maybe tough, maybe a bright history and stuff. Give some stories. Give a unique background of that person's history. And once you can do that, then you're gonna make the game even better. Okay, and a tip for this part is don't copy like the history background from other games because the more you do that, the more boring it's gonna make. Okay, don't make your game boring. Okay, and when I put this in quotations, I'm trying to emphasize the word boring because a lot of gamers themselves don't like to hear the word repetition. We're done. We're done from the concept of repetition. Gaming itself has a lot to do with repetition, right? It was helping our motor cortexes. It was helping us move. It helps a lot. It really helps us with this voluntary movement. And the way we do better is by repeating that task over and over again, to the point that we get super great at that portion of our body, right? But games isn't just that now. Game has a lot of stories behind it now. Games have many things, and you cannot just make it boring. Okay, you can't just do that because gaming as a whole is entertainment. If you want to entertain the audience, don't make a boring concept. Make something new, make something interesting, and you can get an answer to that question if you do more practice in this world of gaming. Okay. All right. Then the next thing is list out the advantages and disadvantages. So figure out what good things what are some good things that the characters can do, like his abilities and talents. He could be good at okay, I'm not trying to make a story here, but he could be good at flying. Maybe he has a flying ability, or he can teleport, or he can time travel. Have something, do something like that. And list out what your character is bad at, his Achilles heel, what is his true weakness, and something like that. Like Superman. This is the best example of Superman, Kryptonite. I know it's the most ugliest example I could give, but yeah, that's a really good example of a weakness that I could talk about. Okay, and then next thing is like make a rough sketch after you have designed, not designed, after you've outlined your character, this world that you're trying to make the character live in. Try to give a rough sketch. You could use things like Procreate, Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, or I don't know. I don't really recommend this. You could also go to Google and get inspired. You can make some mood boards, right? You could get some different pictures and place it on a Google slide or on a Google document, and that should be like a mood board. Okay, that's what a lot of artists do. A lot of designers do that. You could get different colors, like what colors you're interested in, and then that's like a mood board. And you could try putting things together, make your own characters. It's gonna take a lot of paper, or it's gonna take a lot of tries and effort, but then eventually you'll get your rough sketch. Okay, and rough sketch doesn't mean the best one. Rough is just like it's a rough draft, so it's not finalized yet. You need to keep on improvising it until you decide that hey, this is the right time. But don't spend too much time doing this part. It's just gonna waste your time even more. Don't make your game perfect. Rather, make your game more story, like more to the point where it's relating to your intention. Okay, don't go for perfection. Aim for your intention, and that's something about your gaming. Okay, and then finally, implement your character. After you've done designing and outlining this stuff, use things like Unity's Pro Builder plugin. But I recommend using Blender. If you know it, we're going to start knowing a bit more about Blender once we get into the final project. And that can help you make a 3D model character. We're trying to make 3D games and make them come to life, using coding and stuff. And yeah, if you're using Blender, you just need to just import it. I think the process is a bit complex in the beginning, but once you get used to it, you're just going to get used to it, which is amazing. All right, so yeah, that's all about character development. So if you still have any questions about character development, you could ask questions about it on Unity, and we'll do our best to answer those questions if we can. Okay. All right, so the final question is how to level design. All right, so there's many things. First of all, as I said, know the style of the game. Is the game very fast paced? Is it like a shooter game? Is it like some examples of a very fast paced game would be like Star Fox. Star Fox is a really, really famous game. You could search it up. It's amazing. I never played it, but I know the concept and I watched some old videos about it. But that's an example of a fast-paced game. Another example of a fast-paced game would be like Geometry Dash, which is like in the hardest level of Geometry Dash. In fast-paced games, what else could be fast-paced games? Star Wars, maybe. I'm not sure. Not like Lego Star Wars and stuff. But if you were gonna make a Star Wars game, but in a spaceship, think of like a movie, the movie Star Wars. It's really, really active, right? It's non-stop. The action isn't stopping instantly. It's always happening, and that is fast-paced. It just keeps on happening. It's rapid. It's really fast, and you cannot slow down. That's the meaning of fast-paced. Slow pace is like hey, it's going slowly. The game is moving slowly. Usually, horror games are also slow-paced, to bring a sense of suspense and stuff, which kind of just scares the player itself, which is actually the point. You want to make the player scared, which is great. Or you can make the game a bit more linear, so it goes at a constant rate from not as scary to really scary, or not as hard to really hard. Okay, but you don't want to always make your first level the hardest level. Okay, you want to always make sure you get the attraction of the user in the first minute of the game. In the first minute of the game, that is the point where you're trying to attract the audience and get them hooked into your game. And the worst way to not get them hooked in your game, like the worst way to do that, is basically make the first level super hard. Because what happens is they're just gonna give up and stop playing your game, which is something that you definitely don't want to have. Which is something that you definitely don't want to do. Okay. And then there's accelerating. Like it's very slow. It's very slow until it gets super super fast, really really fast as time passes. Okay, I don't really recommend doing accelerating unless your game has a lot to do with that kind of concept. Usually, fast-paced and linear is always the way to go. Linear is best way to go. Fast-paced is specifically for those games like Star Fox and stuff. Okay, so it really depends on your game. Know the style of your game, and then you'll be able to get a better sense of what type of levels you want to make. Okay, then after you're done with that, this is like a beat chart you want to do. Okay, you want to make sure it's like a rubric when you make these levels. When I say roller coaster, this is only for fast-paced games. So for linear games, then just plug in linear for roller coaster. Okay, my apologies there. Okay, so just make sure that whatever you chose in the first step, it follows that. Okay, that's the first thing in your rubric. The second thing is you need to make a moment from 1 to 10 in terms of intensity. You need to set them in the level. Make each level represent with a certain level of intensity. Okay, it has to range from 1 to 10. Just design it. Which number you want to give it, you need to decide. But make sure that level 1 is given a low intensity rate. Okay, then the progression. What's the difficulty type as you progress, and what's the enemy types as you progress throughout the game. You need to know that. You need to think about it. But for us, since it's a maze game, there aren't really a lot of enemies. The only enemies would just be the surroundings, which you cannot touch, right? And then again, you cannot talk about. Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to talk about. And then the fourth thing is the 10 seconds of the 10 seconds of the moment in the game should not be the same. So as you move on to the levels, the first 10 seconds of each level shouldn't match each other. They should be really different from each other. And that's what makes the game more unique. It helps the user feel a bit more challenged, because then they don't want to feel like they're just doing the same level over and over again. They want to feel like something new is happening to them. This is also something that you might think of it when you're trying to play your own game. You might not realize it until I brought up your subconscious mind, and now you know about it. So my apologies. So yeah, so I was talking about this, okay? So just make sure that your first 10 seconds of the moment, it's not the same. And you can do this by playtesting. So while you're making your game, I really recommend playtesting. Keep playing your game, keep testing your game, and maybe, I guess, doing screen recording would be very preferable, and then you could compare each level individually, okay? But this is really important. Don't make the first 10 seconds of each level the same. Otherwise, it's going to get super boring. So don't do that. All right, and finally, you want to link your story, the story that you made, the themes that you did. You want to link it to the story and the player experience. For us, the story would be more like the mechanics, right? Because we don't really have a story in our game. You have a level system, and it really has to relate. The level, the environment, the players, the experience of the player. It has to relate to the story, the theme that we chose, okay? And what I'm trying to say is, one more thing I want to talk about these things is, make sure that whenever you're making any themes in your game, you're trying to make sure that the player who's playing the game, they also feel the same. So what I'm trying to explain is, if it's a horror game and this person is let's say his arms accidentally got cut, you need to make the person who's playing the game also feel like their arms got cut, not literally, but make them feel like it. And once you get that feel, you make them get that feeling. That is literally what makes your game 10 times or 100% amazing. Triple A. That's just what we call triple A. You gotta make the player who's playing this game, he has to directly relate himself to the game itself, and that's what's making the video games amazing in terms of what we're talking about. Okay. So if you need more help on that, just let us know, okay, and I'll help you out there. And then finally, you don't have to make a drawing or anything about this. You could even think this in your head. Make an intensity chart, okay? So when I talk about intensity chart, we've talked about this before. Label each levels with some sort of intensity. So for us, we wouldn't have like 8 levels. We would have like only 5 levels. But usually, the intensity would usually linearize when you go to level 1. It wouldn't be as hard. But then you could also start going super insane in between. And then as you progress to level 2, hey, it gets a bit harder. And then 3 gets okay in the middle. The 3 is like, the middle point of the entire level, all the 5 levels. It's a middle value. So usually level 3 tends to be an easier level. And then you could go back to level 4, which is, again, getting a bit harder than usual. And then you start relieving themselves. And then level 5 is usually, which is the last level. Last level usually tend to be the most hardest level in the game, right? And that's what we want to do. Make them super scared once they reach level 5, okay? Not suddenly the moment they start, but eventually they'll realize, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, Give them that oh crap moment. And yeah, that's what's going to make your game amazing. But keep yourself unique. Don't try to copy others. Get inspired by others and try making your own level intensity chart, and you'll do great on this, okay? This is also available on our keynote as well, so you could access it later if you want, right? So that's basically it on what I wanted to talk about in this entirety of class. Okay. I don't know. Oops. All right. There you go. So what I want you guys to do now, this is something that I haven't done. I was dumb enough to not do it. Is I want you guys to actually design. Implement the thing that you just designed in your whatever thing you drew for your maze. Start drawing them. and start implementing them in Unity. Don't make it as gross as I did, like it's brown plain. I was just doing it for fun to give you an example of how materials work. But start working along with them. Like start understanding how to put all your mazes together. Now, one problem that you might encounter is how will I put multiple environments, in different places? Well, we call them scenes, okay? So you'll have to make different scenes in the game. So one thing that I highly recommend is we're gonna have to know a bit more about prefabs. I'll be discussing them in the next lecture, the next meeting next week. Is I want you to make whatever your land is. So for me, this is the land. I think this is my land. This is not my land. Okay, so I can just drag this out for now. Yeah, so I can just drag this to if I drag this to the project file, some of you might know this, we call it a prefab. So then you could access this in other levels of the game, and you could keep on doing it, so you don't have to waste your time doing precise dimensions and stuff, okay? So one way you can make a new scene is just go to where the scenes are and right click, create, and we just create a scene. Okay, and then you can name it whatever you want. I'm gonna name it level 2. So just repeat this until you have level 5. So you have a total of 5 different scenes. And just basically implement all the designs you made into the Unity. All right. And maybe share one of the things that you did into our Discord server, and people can give you feedback as well. Honest feedback. All right. Um and what else is there? And you could also, for me, once you have made your character, you could also implement your character in the game as well. And then you could also make this a prefab so that you can access it again. So when you're making a prefab, right? The first of all, it becomes blue if it's a prefab. It's like a template if you think of it. Now, if I just save this quickly and I go to another scene, this is a level 2 scene. I can literally just drag this over here, and it's literally the same thing. The same thing that I made in the previous level. It's also here. So it's more like a template thing. We can make our own drag and drop templates. And it's going to be really helpful. It's going to save you a lot of time for now. But there's actually more uses to this, which we'll go in the next, which we'll discuss more about in the next lecture, okay? So now what I want you to do is basically, so let me just go back. All right, yeah, my bad. So what I want you guys to do today is I want you to, first of all, I'll be sending this already in the assignment section, so you could hear this later. But I want you to first implement what you did in Unity, right? Designs that you made for your maze. If you have any questions, you could always hit us up in Unity or ask anybody for help, and they'll help you. And also, the more you help others, the chances are high that you'll also get XP from there. All right, and then also implement the characters you did and everything in Unity, and then let's see, make the prefab that you did for both the land and the character. And yeah, that's basically it. And you'll be done basically for the entire day. And I'll be making some more tier list games and stuff to share in this entire service as an alternative assignments if you want to do just for fun as an activity. And I'm actually doing all these fun activities. And remember, I'll just give you an example. Let me go back to the main chat screen. So let me just in the submissions channel, I remember that one time I was here you go. I was talking about these things, right? I wanted you guys to do these things so it can inspire you that what type of games you're more interested in. So these type of activities are actually helping you with your brain. It's like an exercise to help you figure out what you really love to do. What's your favorite area of gaming? And that will actually help you figure out what kind of games you want to make. All right, it's like a practice. It's like an exercise, and it's gonna be truly beneficial once you do more of these exercises. As it's like a brain exercise, and it'll just help you realize what you really love to do in this gaming industry and stuff. And you'll be making AAA video games from doing such things. All right. So I really highly recommend doing all these things, doing all these activities and stuff, and you'll do really great eventually in this GDC. And everyone's willing to help each other over here as well. So don't feel free to reach out to anyone here if you're confused. All right, this is the point of a GDC if you're trying to become unified and stuff. All right, so this is basically the end of the meeting. I'll be sharing out the assignments and stuff later. Also, whoever's responsible for the attendance, you could also do the attendance check now. It would be really great. But yep, that's it for today's meeting. And yeah, I'll see you next week. All right. Catch you later, guys.